and see which one doesn't have the baddunas in your teeth.
I don't know how to really say this without getting emotional.
About 30 years ago, we're not going to say how old we are, we're in denial.
It's almost like it's a completely different era.
So I don't see the rush of trying to get to the next track super fast.
I'm going to assume you're not in this to just make it quick and fast and easy. You have an appreciation for music.
The first time I've ever used the internet was at your house.
Wow. Technically, anyone can be a journalist today as long as they have a microphone.
It's not a game of Super Mario where you're trying to collect as many stars and mushrooms. You know, غربية شرقية, you know, I used to rent my speakers from شرقية and do parties in غربية.
Ahmad Ajam, welcome to MTV.
Hey, Ronnie. Great to be here. Great to be with you, especially after our 30 years of friendship.
Celebrating 3 decades of friendship, of growth, of one hell of a journey we've both shared. I don't know how to really say this without getting emotional, but whenever there's somebody from my childhood who's joining me on the podcast, I have goosebumps. And seeing you today, right now, I felt very emotional. And on the ride up from Beirut, I was listening to music from our generation. I was trying to get back into that. I think it's a certain spirit that we both had. It's this post-war innocence. I'm not going to get too emotional for the episodes. I think we'll both start crying, so I'm going to avoid that. Let me just start off by introducing you my way. One of the most talented DJs in Lebanon, DJ MADJAM. Somebody who's pioneered, I think, in electronic music and DJing, a former radio host. I didn't know until right now you had a television gig here at MTV briefly. And somebody that I think I turn to when I need to de-stress. Now, we're both getting a little older, but not that long ago. At BO18, a little too drunk at 2 in the morning, and there you are, a shining star, making the platform, making the room really, really special. Everyone dancing to your beats. More recently, friends of mine, a bit younger, seeing you at recess at around 2 or 3 in the morning,
Nice.
doing the same thing.
Nice.
And I'm glad that people our age still have that energy to stay up that late. I don't know how you pull it off, but I guess it comes with the turf. It comes with the job. So let me start from the beginning, and then we can fast forward. Before we started recording, and we haven't really spoken much recently, I think that's a good thing for a podcast, keeping it fresh. You reminded me, I think it was 30 years ago. That's the first time I recorded or you recorded or we did something together that was audio featured.
That's right.
It was an audio thing. If you can bring that back to life as much as you remember, it would be a thrill for me.
You and I have a lot of history.
Yes.
About 30 years ago, we're not going to say how old we are, we're in denial, but the first time that I had you record a radio show was at my house. I had the mixer, I had the cassette tape, I shoved the microphone in front of you and I walked away, kind of like how we are here in the studio with the control room being on another floor. And I recorded you and I made you talk during the tracks. And we were big fans of Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince.
That's right.
So we only had so many CDs, so we ended up playing, 4 or 5 tracks out of the same album. But we would record a whole hour because those cassettes would fit, a whole hour. But you do it 30 minutes, then you have to switch sides of the cassette.
Right.
And then I don't know where that cassette went, but we definitely have that somewhere. And so your first microphone experience was in my bedroom, for lack of a better place.
That's
in Talat al-Khayyat.
Talat al-Khayyat. That's great because in the last 3 decades, everything has changed in that domain. And I think your work has sort of matched that evolution. First of all, cassette tapes. That in itself is sort of a time capsule. Recording and then flipping the cassette and the time constraints and also the old machinery to try to do something that we take for granted today, we can all do on our phones without any difficulty.
That's right.
Is it fair to say that this is the generation that had to really catch up with technology? Because the Ahmad Ajam of 30 years ago and the Ahmad Ajam of today, if you put these two people and the technology, it's almost like it's a completely different era. So is that a fair way of looking at your own sort of progression in electronic music and DJing and really the audio format?
It definitely technology has always been evolving. I was there in the early 90s when I was really young. I was 10 or 11 years old. Yeah. And a lot of the DJs were in their late teens or early 20s, very envious and jealous. But there were very few DJs back then. The main reason why is because technically it was very hard. Like you're saying, to get music was pretty hard. So either we'd record, cassettes off the radio, or we'd wait for a friend who's coming from abroad to bring us the latest album. And back then you couldn't record CDs, let alone USBs or hard drives now. But back then it was you had to buy the original CD. So I'm really happy that there's some vinyl here on the table that reminds me of how back then you would buy a whole album for one or two songs, and you'd actually have to play just those 1-2 songs, but you would keep that whole album all the way through. So by the mid 90s, we started recording CDs, and that was like a miracle. That was unheard of.
Yeah.
And
but
so that made our lives easier.
2 years in, and then you have to readjust. So that's even in those early to mid 90s, there's a sudden shift.
Yeah.
From cassette to CD.
CD.
Right. So that's the birth of digital, whatever you want to call it. Format, yeah. Has that been part of your journey in how you express yourself while DJing? In other words, do you hold any nostalgia to the early difficulties of trying to figure it out? Because I do, even though it's not my profession, but I do miss the sound, I miss the effort, and I think sometimes certain quality emerged with patience.
I was about to say the word patience and the attention. So back then, again, we would listen to a radio track, let's say a radio edit. So if we're playing a club version, the club version would be 8-9 minutes long. The radio edit was 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, actually last night I was going through about 200 new songs and giving my feedback. It's what I do almost every day. It's part of my homework. Wow. And the extended version is 3 minutes. The radio edit is now 1 minute and 45 seconds. Right. But the radio edit has been solid since the 70s. It's 3 minutes, 30 seconds. And only in the last 5 or 6 years has the radio edit actually shrunk to 1 minute, 45 seconds. So people definitely have a lot less patience. And I know that I still respect the music because back then, we had the original CD. So we would love the song. You would want to play it and people are going to sing along to it. And nowadays, a lot of DJs are trying to pack as many songs as they can into 1 hour, where I think, you defeat the whole purpose of people enjoying the music. You want to hear that part of the song, Gangster's Paradise. You want to hear the third verse. No one ever gets to that third verse. Tell me why are we? Nobody gets that anymore because the DJs are in such a rush to cut because technically it's much easier now. Everything's on a USB. But back then when we had the CD or the cassette, you'd have to flip through the case logic, whip out that CD, find the right track, get the right speed. That whole process took about a minute on its own. Right. So you would actually be playing 3 minutes of the track and nobody would complain that the song was long. Everybody would enjoy it. But nowadays you have 30 seconds or TikTok songs which are 15 seconds. Right. So everyone's attention span has been so down and compressed.
But in your experience, and this is how I remember first getting myself acquainted with a DJ and a DJ set. We're looking at vinyl records here. You have to listen pretty much to the whole record, and it takes time. And even putting the vinyl on the record player,
putting the needle on the record, getting the right moment, the right weight, making sure it's not scratching.
And also, it's hard to skip tracks, so you actually have to enjoy the whole album if you really want to. But even when it came to clubbing, I remember the songs being longer too.
Much longer.
Much longer. And I remember wanting that to be the case. I didn't feel like the songs had to be rushed through. But I like that you're saying that. I didn't know this even. It shows you I haven't listened to radio much recently. 1 minute and 45, that's half of the...
It's half of the radio edit.
Yeah, so that's an edit's...
Edit.
Edit. Does that make your job in a way more frustrating? Because I'm going to assume you're not in this to just make it quick and fast and easy. You have an appreciation for music.
Of course.
So how do you in a way navigate that? Wanting to get songs out? If it's 200 songs the night before, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's just going through new music, 200 tracks.
Right. So, I mean, does it affect the art? Do you feel like there's something that shouldn't be done the way it's done now? Or are you, in a way, sort of accepting of this, that this just digital technology forces people to be quicker and faster?
So that's the thing, again, because you were talking about nostalgia. So the tracks that I play, whether it's a wedding or a rave, and I do two opposite sides of the spectrum. So I'll do a wedding one night where I'm playing a big mix of everything. And the next night I'm doing a rave where it's completely different. And feeling-wise, maybe it's a Gemini in me, I guess.
Well, I'm a Gemini too.
The Gemini in us.
The
right?
Gemini in us.
Yeah, I'm a couple of weeks ahead of you, I think.
Are you? Oh, your birthday's coming up then.
It's coming up, but I won't reveal.
Birthday.
22nd. of May.
Oh,
I
yeah.
won't say what year though. Yeah. So yeah, I still play tracks that I like and I want to hear as well. So I'm not in a rush to squeeze 300 songs into 5 hours. I'd rather do 150 quality. And I know that these songs are great and they're worth listening to and they're worth dancing to. So I personally still enjoy listening to them and I enjoy dancing to them myself. So I don't see the rush of trying to get to the next track super fast. So there's one thing that I've retained is respect for the songs. And with a lot of the weddings that I do, the bride and groom say, please don't cut the song too fast because, we want to enjoy it. So I'll leave at least a minute and a half of it or 2 minutes of it, where other DJs will play 15 seconds. So I still have this patience of doing it. And I'm treating the song as if it's on a CD or as if it's a vinyl because I still want the song to play and I want everybody to enjoy and to dance rather than, okay, next, okay, next, okay, next.
Right.
Everything is going by too fast.
Do you think that's just a consequence of the medium, that digital technology has sort of had warp speed advancement?
Combination of many things, actually. And funny, if I have another connection with you, which goes back to the past. The first time I've ever used the internet was at your house.
Wow.
And it was with your late father. He had a connection with one of the first internet companies in the country. So, of course, as 13-year-olds, first website we loaded was playboy.com. And we are waiting for the page to load. And so that took forever. And I think somebody picked up the phone and we lost the main part of the picture.
Of course, it was the landline modem.
It was a landline.
Of course.
So somebody picks up the phone, your internet connection was gone.
It's right at the moment.
So that was our first experience that you and I had with internet, and we waited for the parents to leave, obviously, so we can enjoy the website, which we never downloaded the full picture.
They were inside doing the same thing.
Probably curious as to what's on the web. The internet was great when it first started because it was a discovery, like we did. We discovered it. But now we're spoiled for choice because of the internet. There's pros and cons. The pros are the fact that you're exposed to music from all around the world. In the last few years, thanks to TikTok and these Instagram stories, we're getting to know African artists who otherwise wouldn't stand a chance on a big record label.
Right.
And some of these tracks are being picked up by so many people that then the big record labels around the world are getting to know them. The cons are that everybody has a YouTube account or a Spotify, and if there's a song they don't like, they push next. So people didn't have the power to do that 30 years ago, even 20 years ago. So everybody would listen to the song the DJ was playing rather than pushing the button. Okay, I like this song, but I'm done with it after 30 seconds. So it's a combination of people losing their attention and the fact that the DJs have to keep up with this shorter attention span, which I find one of the cons of the internet. But I'm still very happy that we get music from anywhere. You can find almost any song you want in the world. Just a case of respecting the song, playing the song almost as the original producer made the track. Maybe there's a remix or an extended version, but I would rather play the extended version because, again, I want to enjoy the song as well. I'm not here to just play it and win another point. It's not a game of Super Mario where you're trying to collect as many stars and mushrooms. You're just trying to satisfy people on the dance floor, and it's more about quality rather than quantity.
So this is a very nice way of introducing the democratization that we've both experienced in many different fields. It's the first time I hear it through music, although it's an obvious consequence of having everything online all the time and something you can literally, both of us can now pick the song we like, and if we don't like it, if it's streaming, you just skip. But that's also impacted, I think, professions in general.
Radio, FM radio. I did 20 years with a radio station here in Lebanon. From when I was still in school, I was still in ACS.
There you go.
I was still a senior, and I was doing a radio show every Friday, which, again, at the age of 17, 18, was kind of new at the time. Yeah. But nowadays, you wouldn't see that anymore. It's really rare.
Was it Mix FM, Ahmad?
It was Mix FM, correct. 20 years.
20 years. Okay, so
20
this, years. I don't know. Mix FM, I guess, is still on.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is there, 104.4.
Correct.
I have not turned on the radio in probably more than 20 years.
You want to know something really funny? I turn on the radio on my way up here just to see what's going on. But normally it's my 90s R&B and hip hop CDs that I'm playing all the time in my car. I said, let me just browse and see what's going on the local world of radio. So the impact of what smartphones and being able to have your own control over music has done is given everybody too much freedom. Well, maybe it's a good thing. Again, it's an open market now. But it also means that anybody can listen to their phone and they'll prioritize their own music over radio, over FM radio.
Everyone has a camera as well, so technically we're all photographers now.
Yeah.
We all have an Instagram account. We're always posting photos.
Instagram versus reality. There's a difference. There's a difference without the
True.
filters.
And there's also a difference between what we do here and the old photos we used to take, which had to be, in a way, we had to process them.
And wait a week.
Yeah.
And make sure you don't take the film out, or else the film will burn.
And it was expensive, and we had to. I mean, there was a different layer of effort, which is maybe closer to the cassette and sort of music.
You would cherish the music more because it was so much
Yes.
effort to get that
Right.
photo printed. Where now you're taking 5 of the same photos, and you see
Exactly.
which one doesn't have the dunas in your teeth.
Right.
You know, so
And I actually sometimes I'm careful. Even the word journalist, I think there's a layer and there's layers of experience you need to actually own that phrase. I mean, whenever I'm called one, I turn it down because I know the effort it takes to be one. But technically, anyone can be a journalist today as long as they have a microphone.
that's right.
Journalist in the sense that you can share your opinion and you can put it online, and that's it.
And off it goes.
Off it goes. But I think there's something you mentioned earlier. There's the positive is that we now have the world. We can listen to music from Iceland to South Africa to everything in between. But I don't know if the quality has sustained itself. And I get the feeling that over time, due to many things happening at once, including attention span shrinking, there's something wrong in the ecosystem. Because if you're skipping a song every 15 seconds,
You're not giving it its justice. You're not giving it its value.
there's no value. And maybe also the quality isn't that good. And maybe that's why we're all skipping all the time. But I don't know if that's the way it should be experienced. I think still, maybe a bit old-fashioned, I want to hear the whole track. I want to read an article. When I have time, I want to take a photo with a camera. But then when I say these things, I feel like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
So does any of that resonate with you? And because I know you're still a DJ, you've evolved immensely in the last 3 decades to becoming an outstanding performer. I mean, I think of you less, you know. I think it's a show. It's a performance art, but you've mastered it. But does any of that resonate with you? There's like maybe you're not even so happy with the way the audience experiences your music. Maybe you're seeing a shift with your own terrain. You're wondering why don't they want to hear what you want to hear? The length, maybe their patience is not your patience. And I don't want to be hard on the next generation,
that's
but
cool. I'll give you my reasons and the perspective that kind of hit me last year when I hit 30 years of DJing.
yes.
I realized that I started doing this at such a young age. I was 10 when I was doing those parties, 10, 11, 12. And back then, the priority was just about make people dance. That's all it was. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about the ego. It wasn't about the social media likes. I mean, I have friends of mine who are trying to be the most popular. And until the day they become the most popular, they're still hating on life. Or for me, it's always been about whether it's 30 people or 18,000, you know, whether I'm playing on a stage or playing in someone's balcony, you know, it's still the same passion that I've had since I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
So I've always followed that same track. And the most important thing is that I haven't stopped. Because I know a lot of DJs who are older than me, I call them the anti-role models, who at one point they pretty much gave up because they were complaining about they don't like the crowd, they don't like the place, this music is not what they liked anymore. They're just doing it because they have to. And the moment I hear somebody says they're only playing this music because they have to is when you're no longer a DJ. You know, just stop that and change your job and go get a normal job. And so for me, it's always been about riding the wave through all the ups and downs, all the changes. So you would, hard to believe, I don't know if many of the people would understand this, but in 2005, we had Tiesto at the Forum de Beirut, and there was 15,000 people. 2009, we had Armin van Buuren at Biel with 19,000 people. Now we're lucky that the biggest events are getting 4,000 to 5,000. But I mean, that's new for now. But we actually were doing better back then. We had bigger events, and there was more unity. So it's all about the crowd's attention and this oneness that the crowd have together, especially Lebanon, because we're such a small geography, right? So we're such a small piece of land. That means the society is also really tight. So almost anywhere we used to go, back then you would have maybe 2 or 3 club options and one big event every 3-4 months, and that was it. But now you're kind of spoiled for choice, where the people are more divided. There's still unity within the crowd, but I would say there was definitely a lot more happiness back then. Now there's more aggressiveness, I believe. The more stress you throw upon people, the harder they party. So I've ridden this wave, and I remember the happy times. And like we're saying, remember the early 90s, post-war, غربية شرقية. I used to rent my speakers from شرقية and do parties in غربية. I'd have to go in a car with a guy who had a special paper or whatever it was. Now that's all done and over with. And we had this connectedness with everybody.
Now we're all partying in Shari.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't even Beirut. Before 2000, everything was in Kaslik or Bramana. But it was almost all Kaslik or Junior. There was no clubs in Beirut until late 90s, I think early 2000s.
One of the first clubs that opened, BO18. But the way you're describing it is exactly how I remember it. I'm glad you're able, it takes some reflection to do this. I feel the same thing. I mean, I don't go out nearly as much as I used to, but when I do, when I kind of flirt with it, I do sense the aggression.
Yeah.
And I know it's not me. I know that. I know something's different. The happiness, I remember it being, I don't think it's just youth. I don't think it's just nostalgia. I think people were happier. And I also like the way you're describing diversity on the dance floor. I was thinking about this driving up today. There aren't that many places you can experience real diversity in Lebanon. They're limited. And I was thinking, okay, where?
Airport. Always airport or going to get Sajal Adli. That's where you see the real everyday Lebanese. Otherwise, you 100%. Don't see the everyday Lebanese.
So I was thinking, even we don't really see each other, but the highway brings us all together.
That's right.
But we're all in our cars, so it's not
looking
really
at each other.
Yeah, and cutting each other off like we should. The Corniche is something like that, but the Corniche has become, in a way, a cliche example, I think.
My mom still goes. My mom every morning.
Oh, there
30
you go.
years.
Yeah.
Every morning she still goes. That's where she's made most of her social connections.
Right.
The 6 a.m. people, not the 6 p.m.
100%. So even there's like a different character, but it's always an inclusive environment.
That's right.
But that's only like the tip of the iceberg, because real diversity, real inclusion, I think happens on the dance floor. And I'm not going to borrow your words, because in a way you illustrated this before we started today. It's not just sect, it's not just age, it's gender, it's expression, it's identity.
It's passion.
Passion. So that's, I guess, the thing that is intact, that has not changed. So can you, in a way, offer an explanation why that's a safe space for all of these different types of people to come together? Whereas usually there's no place like that.
So the difference between clubs and events, or at least clubs back then versus now, it's a place where you go to fish khilit. You're going to relieve your stress. Everyone deals with so much stuff on a daily basis that the only happiness they get is on the weekends. Or at the weddings. That's one place where everyone's dressed. It's like prom. Everyone dresses really well. And a lot of people, when you announce an event that's happening, usually a couple of weeks in advance, we used to do it 4 months in advance, but people's attention span again.
Right.
You can only announce an event max 2 weeks in advance. And when you do, everyone knows that, okay, that's the place where we're all going to be. The few thousand people are going to be on that spot. Now, on the weekends, you have 2 or 3 options, but back then you only had the one giant event where everyone who's anyone was going to be there. I mean, I would see my hairdresser there. I'd see my car mechanic there. I would see people from other schools. We were ACS. At the time it wasn't so yo-yo, but anyway, you would get to meet other students from other schools, and that was one of the only places where, if you remember, in the late 90s, Naji Buzz had a company called Buzz Productions, and I think he was doing Biblos Festival.
Yes.
Back then, he did a couple of series of events called Beat Machine.
Of course. Oh
so
my God.
Beat Machine, for those who remember the 90s, not born in the 90s, but if you remember the 90s, these Beat Machine events, the first one was in Mon La Salle, I think it was in 95. The second one was in Forum de Beirut in 96. And each one of these had 12,000, 13,000. And you would bump into Lebanese you wouldn't even come across at that age. We're 15, 16.
And well-established artists would come.
Yeah.
It wasn't
one-hit wonders. You have a bunch of one-hit wonders,
yes,
but then you'd have a couple of that would have a second hit.
Yeah.
And so these were the first time where you would see thousands of Lebanese, where I met Lebanese from like Trablos and Anjar, and from like Burj Hamoud and from, all over, and Hazmi. They would all come to that one event.
Yeah.
That was the only time it was a simple, beautiful melting pot.
Yeah.
So we've kind of evolved from that, even though it was that one event that would happen a year, to like one that would happen every couple of months, and now there's one every couple of weeks. But the more we do, the less unity there is, and the more everyone's going there just for the sake of you know, we just want to go and have this crazy Saturday night, forget Sunday, we're going to be tired, then Monday go back to work.
Do you think that's where the less joy comes from, that it's happening all the time so people don't think of it as special?
It's become like a routine to some people. It's become
Routine.
like going to the gym, which I'm all for, because again, I'm glad that I'm still riding this wave and still seeing how it's evolved, but I'm adapting super fast to keep up with what's going on. And the music has changed a lot. Even the music sound, only recently we have some happy sounds, but most of it is pretty aggressive.
Yeah, you know, that's actually, I never thought of this. Even the lyrics have become
dark-ish.
Yeah. But that's not Lebanon. That's sort of universal trend, because the music is still...
Post-2012, I'll give you exactly when that transition happened. It wasn't a sudden transition. It was a gradual transition that started 2009. By 2012, the music went from what we used to call major keys to minor keys. So nowadays, when I get music, almost all the music is in minor. So for those who know their music, the minor has a little bit of a dark tone to it. Not necessarily dark, just a darker edge to it. Where pre-2009, 2012, most of the music that we had, whether it was on the radio or even the club stuff we played, had more or less a major, so a kind of happier tone. I'm not going to say Disney, but borderline kind of happier tone.
And
so
that's all types, or is that mostly electronic?
all types.
All types.
Yeah, all types. There's some Arabic. Actually, I don't do that much Arabic, but only at weddings I do. I have like 40 tracks. We choose 20. I'll play 5. But half the Arabic is still in that happy tone. It's still in the major key, just because it's very friendly and colorful, and it's a nice escape. Where nowadays I feel like people's escape from music is fueling more darkness.
That's
in a way. It's reflective of their life. When things were happier, listen to happier music. You know, when people go on a trip to, I don't know, Ayanapa or Mykonos, they listen to stuff and they go, wow, the music there was amazing, versus here, it's so much happier. I'm like, yeah, because you're reflecting on people going to a vacation spot to have a good time. So the music reflects that happiness. Where here it's
amazing. Yeah.
I'm angry and I'm asab, hayat is zero, and I want to go and kasser. You know, I love this word kasser.
But those years, 2009 to 2012, if I'm not mistaken, that's when streaming becomes an option. It's around then.
Yeah.
So I don't know when exactly Apple Music begins, but that's really when the iPod starts making it easier to kind of just listen. I guess it happens a little later, but streaming begins in that stage.
True, and then Spotify came along.
Spotify,
it's your
right.
automatic DJ, which has completely, more or less, killed 90% killed off radio. The only thing that radio does is connects the listener in their car to where they're living, the locale. So in Dubai, for example, radio is still very big, because all the information that the presenters are giving is related to the city. Where in Beirut, there's almost nothing that really relates to the city. It's like, here is health and wellness. Here's your horoscope. Like you can read that online. You have to think about what is making radio special that they can't do on their phone is something you have to really create. So that's why it's harder.
But let's assume Beirut is still linked to the rest of the world in terms of trends, to a degree at least. The iTunes and then Spotify and all that happens later, is that... I mean, I'm thinking why major to minor would happen in that stretch. Is it because, is there a demand for more aggressive music? I'm thinking why those years are the shift from more joyful to less joyful.
Maybe more expressive, you know, so maybe more reflective of people's characters. So again, when you go back to the music in the 80s, most of it was in major key.
Right.
Even Depeche Mode, their original, I Just Can't Get Enough, it was major.
Yeah.
And then you went much, All I Ever Wanted, you know, you went darker suddenly. So that's been a reflection on music almost all around the world, where we've gone into the kind of darker tone. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just more reflective of societies on a global scale.
That's really
and so that's why I love doing the raves, because I know that the people who are coming to pay their, I don't know at the time what the entrance fee, maybe 400,000 or 500,000, they work to make sure that they have that extra 500,000 so they can come and express. So I'm there to make sure that I can conduct and direct them into that place so they have a really great night until 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's more expressive and it's more reflective of what they go through every day. So we used to say music was an escape. It still kind of is an escape, but now it feels a little more parallel with people's lives rather than being something that's so artificial and obnoxious it doesn't work anymore.
That's fascinating. So even the 80s to 90s trend, the fact that something similar happened a decade ago, and maybe now we're coming out of it, it sort of has its impact on the way people dance too, and the way people meet. This is all. It's fascinating to see how this stuff meets your world on the DJ.
And let me tell you one thing about the dancing.
Yeah.
The dancing has changed. The dancing used to be proper, banging, sweating. Everybody would be like, oh, yeah, end of the night. They don't care about the sweat. But now people are more, how can I say, isolated. Back then, you would have a crowd that would all be together. Now you just have them during these ups and the downs. But then halfway through the night, you notice one guy on the dance floor who's just kind of staring around. He's kind of lost and confused. You would never see that back in the day. Now, I'm talking 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Everybody would be connected together. You would make new friends. Where now it's more like everyone's in their own universe, kind of separated.
Do you think that's got to do more with recent stuff like
I think it has
Corona
to do with social media. It has to do with social media has done that. It's made some people think that they are their own star in a way. And so everyone thinks that the person next to them should know them or should owe them or should recognize them. So I find that like hard to believe. Remember, I was on TV for 9 years as a kid. You came with me a few times. We did a TV show on Lebanon on Future TV called Safinat Nuh. And I was on this for 8 years when there was only 4 or 5 local TV channels. And I used to hate when I'd go into a supermarket and some kid would go, Ahmed, Safinat Nuh, Safinat Nuh, Safinat Nuh. So you remember, you came a few times with me on that show as well.
Are these things on? I would love to see them if they're still online.
There's a little clip on YouTube.
I'll look for it tonight.
Yeah.
I think
there's a little clip. So back then, I mean, it would be rare for people would admire a group of people. But nowadays, everyone's admiring themselves. And this also happened around 2012. I wouldn't say Facebook as much. It was more Instagram, kind of Snapchat. I think now TikTok is just out of control. But it was around the time when Instagram picked up, around 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
And the streaming, there's a number of factors that all led everybody to think that they are their own star, and the fact that they're able to choose their own music, and the fact that now on the dance floor, you see them dancing by themselves.
Are they, I mean, the way you see it, are they more self-aware? And that's why they're all sort of, in a way, they're looking at a selfie video of themselves in their minds rather than just letting go?
Yes, exactly. Because nowadays as well, when you look at a crowd at one of these big events, there's an amazing moment. I mean, I wish I had some footage with me from, 2005 and 6. Even 2009, everybody would be together and screaming. Where now half of them are more focused on getting that video, and you're actually seeing more cameras than you see hands.
Right,
And this is happening everywhere, from Tulum in Mexico to Ibiza to Beirut. And to me, that's a little sad because you're living that moment. Okay, I know you want to remember that moment, but you know that someone's going to upload a video. So why does everybody think that they have to upload that video? Enjoy the moment and have a good time, rather than thinking about, I want to show everyone who follows me what I'm doing. So I find that transition a little bit more of a con. Like, it wasn't supposed to be that way. You would look together. The best memories are in your head, rather than being on the little video that's going to be all distorted. And
it's incredible because it seems like really everything comes back to this little device.
Yeah.
It has changed everything.
The Black Mirror.
The Black Mirror. You're absolutely. It's changed also the way we experience music. And honestly, not to sort of beat it over and over, but I do hold on to that window where technology was moving quickly, but maybe we're the tail end of what it felt like not to have this and to grow up without it. And I think maybe there's a divide there. And the years you mentioned, I think there is sort of it's a cliff.
Transition, but it was a gradual, kind of like a gradient. It went from white to black, and it happened gradually, but I was very conscious and aware of this.
Yeah.
And I'll give you actually a couple perfect examples of when the phone was taken away, the atmosphere was amazing. So during the COVID phase, we don't want to remember the COVID phase 3 years ago, people still needed to dance. And if anything, they needed to dance more, especially Lebanon. We were going through so much stuff, even pre-COVID, Corona, what they want to call it, Corona. So the raves were more in demand, but then they were not happening. And the only ones that did would be sent on WhatsApp to a few people, and no phones were allowed. So
to not get in trouble.
To not get in trouble. This happened for about a couple of years. I'm not going to mention the area.
Everyone got corona.
Supposedly, but I was there almost every single one. I never got sick. I had a hangover once or twice, but I never got
That's different.
not even a stuffy nose.
Good.
So,
how's your taste buds these days?
Amazing.
Good. All right.
Amazing. With my hot sauce and everything.
Yeah.
And toom. So I remember those events that happened because there were no phones allowed, because they don't want people taking videos and potentially sharing it to one of these rat Instagram profiles. those were some of the best events I've done in years because suddenly the phone disappeared.
Yeah.
And everyone was focused on the energy. And they know that they haven't danced in, I don't know, 2-3 months. And this is the one party they found out about. You had to get there before 9 p.m. and you're not allowed to leave before 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock, which means everyone is there, collectiveness together, and no phones. The moment you whip out a phone, one of the bouncers will come in and hey.
So really enforced not to, but I can only imagine that being shocking as well to everyone because they're
they have the urge to take
exactly,
it out, right? But it was amazing. Atmosphere-wise, it was great. It reminded me of the early 2000s.
Right.
You know, talking about taking our collection from the past, our experience from the past. That was one of the few times where that happened. There was also another amazing wedding I did in Istanbul 2 years ago where they didn't want to go public about it. And same thing, there was no phones allowed at that wedding. And anybody ripped it up. There were bouncers, but they were dressed nicely, though. They also told people, please, no videos. And I swear it was one of the best atmospheres ever. Just take the phone away.
I think it's maybe impossible to enforce that, but if it's at least suggested, I mean, I think that allows all types of activities to improve. I'll give you one example.
Social mingling. You mingle, rather than looking at the phone and checking the filter and the quality and uploading it, you know, you're now able to look around at the person. Oh, hey, what's up? Hi, you look familiar, and socialize.
Even concerts that are not DJ related, let's say just a band performing music. I mean, now really half the time people are filming.
Yeah.
I went to see Zed Hamdan not too long ago at KED. I mean,
he was close.
There you go. And I mean, I know he's not playing his Soap Kills music, but still, I like his music. I like his progression too. But it was really like, why are we all filming him? We know him.
We should enjoy this.
Let's listen. Let's watch. I think even sometimes it happens at stand-up comedy shows, they don't let you bring them in anymore. Yeah. Maybe that's just for copyright to not show progress.
But also to focus with the comedian. You want to be full focused.
It takes us back to a moment we have to use our brains. We have to appreciate it. It's a few minutes. It's not days. It's just, at most, sometimes it's a few hours. The brain can handle it.
Yeah, of course it can. It did fine for generations.
Yeah. I think we're lucky that we got to see the shift. Yeah. And I think and something you said earlier resonates with me deeply. You're not a fan of cynical people. I heard you describing the other DJs as past their prime. It's great to hear somebody who's in his prime, not jaded by their profession. And I can't imagine a DJ shining like you while being sort of self-hating or hating your audience. No, you have to be optimistic about this. And you've held on to a lot of optimism. This is where I want to get into slightly more sensitive stuff. We're both in a country that deserves a break. And fortunately, you're able to still offer that breathing space. With everything we've discussed, you're performing, you have sets at night, there are lots of people that go, they know you. When I mentioned I was having you today on the podcast, it's amazing. It's like many people that dance in recess didn't know it's you. I'm like, no, that's the same DJ. Same guy. They're probably all drunk or whatever they're doing at that time. But it's like, no, I know him. And they are, I think, they're there to really let go. But we both know they're not, nobody is comfortable right now. But you offer that space for them. I don't think either one of us is that comfortable either. I think anyone that has stuck around this country in our age, I think is uncomfortable by default. And we're maybe luckier than the average person. But
we've seen brighter days. We've seen happier times.
And maybe in different ways, we've both been able to let go of this country somewhat and go to other places when necessary. And I know that you've performed across the region, many different destinations. But I'm trying to see it from your side. When you get gigs now that are, let's say, in the Gulf, and let's say it's really about right now, that you're able to perform at a huge venue anywhere in the region. It doesn't have to be the Gulf. Istanbul, it could be a wedding, or it could be a bigger venue. And then you come back to this country, and you feel maybe a bit constrained that your effort, it doesn't always pay off the way it should here. That could be financially. That could be artistically. How do you navigate those emotions? Because I find it complicated to kind of always feel like I'm doing the right thing by sticking around here.
To depend on Lebanon.
Yeah. So is there anything you can offer there, and maybe it's a big question, but why you've determined to stick around?
I'll tell you exactly how this works. So my first international gig was to Jordan 20 years ago, 2003, around the same time, a month or two before the Iraq War II, or whatever you want to call it. And so I've been traveling there. I've done most of the Gulf. I've done every country except for Yemen and Libya, but I've done every country in the region.
Wow.
And it was really amazing to see them before the Arab Spring, where things were picking up pretty crazy. I used to go to Syria quite a lot. I used to go to Halab specifically. Damascus was not bad. Halab was amazing, 2008 till 2011. Fresh new scene. So I've experienced the whole region growing more or less from perspective. And they always looked up to Lebanon like, oh, you're from Beirut. Oh, amazing. I heard so much about you. They'd still do that now. I'm going to Dubai after tomorrow. I'm sure I'm going to get someone going, oh, you live in Beirut? I said, yeah, I live.
It's now the other,
How do you do it? I said, I don't listen to the news. I don't check Twitter unless there's something urgent. And I focus on my music and my cats. That's my little secret recipe to being happy in Lebanon. Oh, and the electric bike. Not the car.
Something we both
have in common as well.
That's true.
And so
yours is slightly more powerful than mine.
It gets me around the city, and you don't worry about traffic or parking or nothing.
Exactly.
So, and so what I've done over these years is I've networked across the region. I'm still very good friends with everyone from Saudi to Kuwait to UAE, Qatar, Bahrain. I've seen their scenes evolve, and even though I knew that in 2004 I actually left Lebanon for a few years, I was trying to pursue a different career other than the DJing. I was always DJing, but I had a career in TV production, funny enough. I set up a couple TV channels and I produced a couple shows, which is why it's great being in the studio here on this side of the mic rather than in the control room for once. And so what I've done is there's a lot of Lebanese DJs who I knew were good, and till this day they still ask for help. Apart from the technical help, some of them need to get away. They just said, I can't do any more in Lebanon. This is my limit. It's my peak. So for me, I'm thankful that the airport is open. The airport doesn't close, because I depend on doing stuff abroad. I think 80% of what I do is abroad anyway. And so I've helped so many DJs, probably 110 by now, actually get jobs abroad, whether it's in Africa or the Gulf, but only those who are actually really good and those who I've heard before. And it's sad to say I've witnessed the brain drain from Lebanon. I was kind of part of it, but I came back. I'm a boomerang. I never really got any calm on Dubai. So I was always kind of like the nomad.
Were those the years you were living there in Dubai? Okay, so
2004 till 2008.
Yeah.
And then I was always coming back to Lebanon every 2-3 weeks. So we always used to do these amazing beach parties and club nights. So I never lost touch with Lebanon. It was people thought I lived here. I lived there, and then lived here. It's a bit of a mess. So I've helped so many DJs get jobs and residencies all across the region. And some of them have never come back now. They used to come back once every couple of weeks. Now they come once a year. So I've witnessed this quality of DJs who've left, and some will eventually come back for holidays. While they're here, they'll do a club night. End of the day, they're much more stable there. They're much more comfortable there. And I'm kind of like them. I'm financially more stable abroad, but I live here.
Right. So is that the, I mean, in your world, because I know it's a particular type of occupation, you have to perform in front of audiences. It's not like something you can just do at home. You can't get it on a laptop, download software, and be a DJ.
I'm just glad that the streaming times were done. There was a phase where we're doing the streaming thing, and I had to do a couple, and I don't like the streaming because it's very lonely.
Of course.
You're in your house, in your kitchen, and you're set up, and you're looking at your camera, and it's not legit. I've always been a crowd DJ, even when we were 10 years old or 15 or in my 30s, it was always about having a crowd. So I'm glad that this dependence of being isolated and DJing on your own is not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be with people.
But does it come back to just a simple thing that the airport has to stay open?
Airport has to stay open.
So that's today. It's almost like having one foot in and one foot out is a prerequisite to being a fully, or at least a fully functional DJ. Yeah. And that's able to spread his wings far enough. So the airport has to stay open, but Lebanon, I'm hearing from you that it's not that it's lost its value, but that it doesn't provide what it should anymore.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way of?
Yeah. So since the 2019 crisis, and then along came COVID, and a lot of the numbers have changed. I mean, we all know this, the dollar, I don't know what. So obviously I take a major a cut. I do a major discount for Lebanon because I
yeah.
know that I don't depend
Right.
on the Lebanese market, you know. But I'm glad I'm still able to do them. Where there's, again, some other megalomania DJs will not do an event in Lebanon if it's paying them low. To me, I do it for fun, more or less. There have been many I've done. Till this day, I haven't gotten paid. It's okay. I'm not going to die of hunger, you know. But I still enjoy doing it because I enjoy the Lebanese crowd. I love connecting with them. And again, because I've been riding this wave, you know, where it started where I was the youngest in the club and I was underage.
Yeah.
And then I became the average age. And then now I'm way past the average age. So I'm still meeting people that are, I'm probably the age of their parents now. So this happened recently. I met a girl and her mom is a month younger than me. So she's probably, I think she's your age, actually. You're a June, right?
I'm June.
June 21, was it?
You're very good. 20.
20, I was close enough.
That's
yeah.
very...
So her mom has the same birthday as you plus one day. So
she's younger.
She's younger.
But she already has a daughter that's two. That's
she's
going...
already in LAU.
Yeah.
It's a crazy mind.
But this, so it's really, I mean, in other words, Lebanon doesn't have a financial way of providing for you. The region does, but you're still able to live here. That, I think, has become a model, for better or worse, many of our generation.
Yeah, Zaid Hamdan, you just mentioned him earlier as well.
Exactly.
Zaid, great friend from the 90s as well. And same thing. He obviously couldn't do any more here. I think around 2005, 6 was pretty much where he was looking to do more stuff abroad, and Paris and London and the US and wherever he's going now. And
he was mistreated for his music.
Yeah.
I mean, even that brief detention, was it 2009 or 10?
Yeah, that weird phase.
General Sleiman, that song, But I think our generation has seen so much, Ahmad, and that journey has been one hell of a roller coaster. I'm going to go back to that subject, but there's something that I wanted to talk about earlier. And I don't think you know this. After the port blast, there's a riveting interview that you were kind of moderating between two club owners.
Right.
And I think one of them owns Sky Bar, if I'm not mistaken.
There was Wasim Boumalham, who is part of Grand Factory's second son.
Sorry.
And there was Nimr Saliba, who is Nimr is Uber House.
Uber House.
So they were basically major competitors to each other, and they would do dirty tricks back in the day. But once the explosion happened, it actually united them. And that 45-minute talk was supposed to be 25. It ended up being 45. But it was real and it was raw. And they expressed the common consciousness that happened among most Lebanese. And then after the explosion, we tried doing a fundraiser just to kind of raise awareness. It didn't raise that much. I think the money disappeared or something, of course. We'll talk about that off the mic. And so I'm just glad that we raised an awareness to what happened in Lebanon because everybody saw what happened there.
But that setup, and I'm sorry about saying it shows you my dinosaur brain cells, Sky Bar, of course, Grand Factory.
Because that was Sky Bar, Iris.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, now it's called Seaside. The names keep changing. Yeah.
I know it's a place you regularly perform, and that's how I know where the name has changed because I know, it's a new name tagged to the location.
And it's right next to the port. It's just right there.
Right. But the way you handled that conversation, maybe now it's easier to watch. I watched it not long after it was released. The background is so morbid. It's the silos before the half in the northern side had collapsed. It's a conversation among, these are businessmen, and they're also passionate about music, and they offer that kind of space. Uber House and Grand Factory, you go there to let go, you go there to have a good time. These are places that are hit so hard by the blast, and I know that your profession also gets hurt as a result, and then everything else that happens to the country. And I watched that, and I was like, that's my friend from school, who's now the way my father talked about his generation. I'm like, that's happening to us now. We're inheriting something.
That's right.
And
rather than them doing it over 15 years, we did it over 15 seconds.
Exactly.
15 seconds.
But it was my memory of hearing about the bad stuff, but now we're at that age, and we're going to be telling our kids.
And we have a wave. We have a number of bad things.
A number of bad things, yeah. But I want to go down this road as much as I can with you. Not to make it political. It's more about attachment to this country and what we expect from it. I've become comfortable pretty much by acknowledging that this is the Lebanon I will live the rest of my life with.
This is the status quo. We can't change it. We just have to adapt and absorb, right?
Absolutely. Adaptation and absorption comes with the story. And I can imagine, should we both have children, I guess you don't have children. Is that true?
Yeah,
Or none that you
I got
know of?
4 cats.
4 cats.
4 cats are amazing.
I have 1, no kids, but I can imagine if we both had kids, if they're both 1 month apart in age too, we can time it.
Go. Ovulation, go.
Go. I can imagine they would be doing something similar too. It's not like they're going to have a better life either.
Yeah.
Or maybe they will have better chapters and worse chapters. But I can't, now I'm comfortable with feeling it and acknowledging it. There's a lot of things that are simply beyond our control. This is the story we live in. And I don't want that to sound too bleak, but it's more like an acceptance.
Yeah.
You're the same age as me. We grew up in the same country, the post-war generation.
Optimistic generation.
Has that optimism changed, not to cynicism, more like that kind of background is the background that we're going to live in?
Yeah.
Do you feel that to any degree?
I just accept that that's how it is. I can't do much to change it. I'm here to do what I can to give people a good time and escape it. And again, like you said, maybe I'm a luckier position because I was in the right place at the right time with the right people around me, and I'm still able to have 1 foot, like you said, out of the country, so I'm still okay. But if I delve too much and absorb too much into the Lebanon factor, then I can totally see why. I know many people who've given up. I've seen many DJs, again, with my time and ahead of my time and even now, who reaches a point where they just say, I can't do anymore. I'm done. I'm moving to Canada. I got my papers, and they're working now for they own a sushi restaurant. I mean, it's just to see the changes that have happened. These are people who have given up.
They did the most Lebanese thing in the world. They left Lebanon, opened a sushi restaurant
place
in,
in Montreal.
It's perfect. Like you can't get more Lebanese than that.
Yeah. We're all over the place. So there's few of us who are still not giving up hope. I'm one of these who, again, I love what I do. I love the people around me. I love the small society, again, that we live in, and I'm not giving up on them. Even though I see them in a bit of a darker phase right now, I have to be the optimist. If we're not going to be the optimists, and yet we're the kind of, I guess you'd say, opinion leaders or atmosphere leaders, if we're not happy, then how are they expected to be happy? So I do have a lot of people who tell me stuff like, there's something about the music that you play, it's more groovy, it's more energetic, it puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
For a crowd that normally would never smile. They'll be dancing for 8 hours and they say they normally never smile. So at least let us be a bit of the bleak of color that's still around and adapt as much as we can, but also not completely give up. Not like many have in the past.
Do you see your role as providing that too? When you're performing, is that in you, that you're setting a standard that by not choosing to live in Dubai permanently, by not getting paid on time or ever sometimes, that you're offering that example, that you are one of those people that are doing this because you love this country and that's that?
I'll admit, I still get very nervous before I go. So if I'm starting at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would literally leave my house at 1 and just go clean-headed, clean-minded, not think too much about it because I get nervous. I still get nervous. 31 years later, I still get nervous before I get on a stage. Knowing, and I always lower my expectation because I don't know what's going to happen tonight. I mean, I've had nightmares of music stopping, power cutting, a lot of power
of course,
cutting. I mean, everybody runs generators now before we start. But just in case, there's always the fear of the unknown. So that motivates me, so that fear becomes adrenaline relatively fast. So I go for that rush. So the moment I don't feel that rush is maybe when I will feel like I'm not part of this anymore. But then again, most of the people in this club or in this event are going through a lot more than I am, and they're expecting to have that rush. Yeah. So if I can't feel the rush, then how am I going to be able to express that? But I don't think of that too much from a personal perspective. I just go and do my thing and want to have a good time, and the results will show up later. Although most people nowadays tend to forget. They just remember, oh, it was really good last night. Because really, what part? Goes, I don't know, something was good. But as long as you're giving them that little escape, and again, if you cannot project that positive or that energy release, then how are they going to reflect back? So at least still be the leader, still be around and showing people what you can do.
I have two silly questions for you before we wrap it up. I'll start with the less silly. I'll leave the silliest to the end.
Go for it.
I did something, it's nothing to, I mean, the parallel is so big, but just in terms of numbers. I used to give storytelling tours throughout Beirut.
The walking tours.
Yes,
yeah, I used
sir.
to bump into you.
Yeah.
You'd be walking around Bliss. You'd see Ronnie like, hey, wait, is that Ronnie? Yes, Ronnie, hey.
And then people behind following. And I used
White people, a lot of foreigners, Germans and blondies. And
It's true.
yeah, we used to see like, oh, we want to find foreigners in Lebanon, just follow where Ronnie's going.
Yeah, I've made many couples come to life that way. I think I've created a lot of European passports as a result too.
Nice.
Locals that want an exit.
More brain drain.
More brain drain. I was like, oh, why are there so many Lebanese women on this tour today? Oh, there's German men. This kind of feeling of having 5 people versus 50, or sometimes even bigger groups. I've had 90 people at once. I used to love having a huge audience. 90 is relative, of course.
You'd have to shout, right?
Yeah.
you hear me?
Well, projection, but also I liked having what felt like a packed room outdoors. Do you feel that way too when the dance floor is 50-50 versus a dance floor that's really packed and everyone's having a good time? Does it make you feel better when it's full? Is there ever this moment where it's not full and you're like a bit frustrated? You want, I like bigger audiences, but I know that it's not like if it's just 5 people, they'll probably enjoy it as much, but it's not fun for me. I want there to be a full house.
I want them to all be paying attention as well.
Yes.
Which again goes back to the point about the phones, where I don't mind having, a club with 800 people, and I would have probably 750 dancing, maybe the other 50 are at the bar or the bathroom. But I mean, to have the majority of them expressing their energy, because you're projecting energy and you want them to absorb energy back.
Yeah.
It's this give and take. Same thing what you do with the tours as well. So it's a very important aspect of having them. If I see they're a little down, I question myself. And it's that negative emotion that actually drives you and thrives you to do better.
Right.
Which is, again, why I don't think I'll ever become a megalomania like most of the other guys who I know who got too big, too fast, and are still hating on their crowd. I would never do that. I appreciate everyone exchanging their energy with me, and I will always do my best to give it back to them.
But is there ever hesitation when you see space? You want more people. Does that make you sort of, not anxious, but it's, you know the difference between having everyone looking and enjoying versus having just a few that are enjoying, but it doesn't make you feel good. I don't know if I'm saying it the right way.
I'll give you an example. Maybe you can reflect on this. New Year 2016, we had David Guetta in Dubai, and I was doing the warm-up. David Guetta was doing 3 hours. I was doing 4. So I was on from 8 p.m.
4-hour warm-up?
till midnight, including the countdown, and then he gets on at midnight till 3. And there's 10,000 people at Dubai Media City Amphitheater, and everyone is grooving, but there's one guy who was in the crowd, and he was giving me the finger. And out of 10,000 people, I don't see anybody but him.
100%.
I see that one guy,
Yes.
and I blink, and I look away, shake my head, I'm playing the next track. I look left, and he's there. I don't know how he got from there to there. I mean, it's a good 500-meter walk. I don't know how he got there.
But you see him again.
And I saw him again. And I'm trying to look away, try not to fall. And so he became my motivator because I was trying to figure out, I know he wanted David Guetta. It was still 11 o'clock. David Guetta is getting on at midnight. Just wait. But still, that guy was the one who I remember the most. I'm sure there was 9,999 other people that were very happy, but that guy is the one who's still in my head all these years later, and I can still see him doing this, the finger. I'm not going to do the finger on camera, but he's doing this the whole time, and I don't know how he shows up. I look in the VIP section, he's there. I look down, he's there. And it wasn't an illusion. I even called one of the stage assistants. I'm like, is this guy really giving me the finger? He goes, yeah, ignore him. I said, but I can't. I'm trying to look elsewhere, but my eyes are magneted towards him. So, yeah, it's that one person or that empty spot or the one person on your tour who's not listening, who...
Maybe they're on their phone.
Maybe on the phone.
Something that I know they're not. Yes, I remember them.
You remember the people more than those who are happy and say, thank you, good job. And that's better because that way you know it's never going to get to your head. It's never going to destroy your ego like these other DJs who are just expecting the constant thank you, thank you, thank you. No, it's the person who said, I liked it, but there was one song that was a bit, and I was like, I will take that person to heart. Because, news is mainly negative, right? It's the negative news that drives humanity, like Tucker Carlson said. So it's always that aspect that really drives people. So I know the next time I'm going to do another club at that same space, if that person shows up, I will make sure I play the right vibe for them to be happy versus the other 99% that were okay.
Is this, do you think, a character trait of a perfectionist, that you're wanting 100% satisfaction?
Of course.
And
if you don't do that, then I would have given up a long time ago. I would have stopped this. I would have stopped DJing in school.
I think this, I mean, it's definitely the driving force to succeed.
Yeah.
But I think there's also that other side to it, that it can drive us insane.
Yeah.
And it maybe does both. Makes us shine better, but we're remembering those people.
Of course.
That person may not remember you.
Yeah,
Maybe he's like, no, I didn't. I mean,
I didn't give you the finger. I was enjoying it.
yeah, and maybe he was on something and you wouldn't even know. He wouldn't know what he did,
Yeah.
but you remember him.
Yes.
I think that's, yeah, it's an interesting trait of what it takes to be as good as you are.
And another problem, Ronnie, is sharp memory. So I have very sharp memories of certain aspects. I don't remember math formulas or chemistry, but I remember certain things that happened even 30 years ago or 25 years ago, and I still remember them, and I still want to apologize about them to people, even though it's way long gone. It's like shower thoughts or pillow talk. But you know, that's just part of the past. So by having a sharp memory, you tend to remember those little details a little bit more, and it makes you want to become more of a perfectionist. Makes you want to do better. So yeah.
It's a sensitive person that would say that. For and that's a positive thing. I'll wrap it up with maybe one of the silliest questions anyone could ask you, but I have to ask it.
Go for it.
And I'll start with my side. My favorite DJ, Aphex Twin.
Nice.
Now, he's not to everyone's liking,
Yeah.
but I think of him as a pioneer. The more I appreciate electronic music, the more I appreciate him.
Left field. Yeah, it's a different sound.
The different sound.
Yeah, look up Aphex Twin. If nobody knows it, I suggest you take a look. Yeah.
And you know how I got to know him? I was on a metro in Paris some 20 years ago. He may have been on drugs. I don't know. He was on something. A guy came up to me and he hugged me. And he's like, I love your music. And I'm like,
oh, that's right.
what are you talking about?
This is when you had the beard. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, your music has changed my life. I'm like, what music? And then he told me Richard D. James. I'm like, who is Richard D. James? I finally found out, it's like British DJ who looked a little bit like me, but not, I mean, there was some parallel when I was thinner with more facial hair. And I was like, oh, this is the best thing anyone has ever done, because now I have this whole catalog of a 16-year-old who makes his way into adulthood as one of the most important electronic music composers. And automatically I thought of you. There's this long journey from teenage years, experimentation and success, to your 40s where you're still at it. So my favorite DJ is Aphex Twin. My personal friendship with you allows me to say this. You're one of the best damn DJs I know. I've seen you perform several times, and I'm like, no, I'm glad I'm here. And I know from friends that you're still one of the best DJs in the region. So I'm going to ask you, flip it around. Who's your favorite DJ?
Carl Cox is my favorite DJ. He's in his 60s. He's been through a lot of trouble. He's been through the alcoholism, been through rehab, but he's 60s and he's still rocking it. And he's still traveling around the world. He has like his hard techno sound, and he has his really funky disco 70s groove and soul music. So he still does both. Very positive, always smiling. I didn't really have an idol until I met him, and we did a couple of Middle East tours together in 2006, 8, and 12, and 10. And he's just such a nice guy, down to earth. And first time, he's just smiley and friendly and no attitude. And I mean, there's Lebanese DJs who are not even close, but they have a much bigger attitude and ego than he ever had. So I kept him being like a good role model. Some of his music is maybe a little too hard for me, but definitely him as a character, as a person. You know, especially now that you're revealed, we're in our 40s. So I hope that by the time that I'm in my 60s, I'll still be able to travel and give people happiness and be positive and rock dance floors anywhere possible. There's no more age limit, because people would say, oh, what are you going to do in the future? And I was like, I have no idea. I still don't know what I'm doing. Here I am 30 years later talking to you, sitting with you, and still not sure what's going to come. But as long as you have somebody that's way ahead of you that's still doing it and rocking it, then why not? Keep going.
You've managed to ride one hell of a wave. I think it's happened already, whether it takes 20 years or not. You're that kind of person. And I think it's nice when you finally find yourself emulating that kind of idol. It's good to know that he's not a cynic. He's a positive DJ. And that attitude, I think, goes hand in hand with you. So for those reasons and many others, thank you, Ahmad Ajam, for joining
Thank
MTV.
you, Ronnie. Really appreciate it. Again, keep real, always be nice to yourself. My goal in life is to satisfy people. It's not about myself, it's about them. So it's always been that way, and I really appreciate the fact that you brought me over. And it's really good catching up as well. I'm glad that we didn't talk in advance. We only did it here. We still have a lot more things to cover too, but I appreciate it.
DJ MADJAM. Thanks, Ahmad.
Thank you, Ronnie. Appreciate it, man.